Probably the profession of an archaeologist cannot be called too romantic. For the most part, it is associated with routine work, but sometimes archaeologists find truly incredible artifacts that raise more questions than answers. More recently, archaeologists in Egypt managed to discover two gilded mummies that could lead to the burial of Cleopatra, and scientists from the USA were able to do the impossible. They resurrected ancient microbes that are more than 100 million years old. And of course, I will tell you about the mysterious object in the hand of the god Vishvakarman. Watch the video till the end, you will definitely like it. Hi friend, you're on the KirTop channel. Rare Viking treasure. In the UK, experts have officially recognized the historical value and declared two rare women's brooches from the Viking Age, which were made more than 1,000 years ago and may have belonged to an unknown princess as a treasure. We are talking about Viking jewelry that was discovered by two amateur archaeologists on the Isle of Man. These finds for Britain are extremely rare, although the brooches are oval, traditional for the Vikings. They were made around 900–950 AD in bronze, decorated with silver wire and gilded. According to scientists, only a woman of a very high social status could wear such jewelry. They believe that these brooches once again prove the popular hypothesis that the Isle of Man was inhabited by Scandinavians as early as the beginning of the 10th century. Oval brooches were used not only as decoration, but also as a clasp with which the upper part of the outer dress, similar to an apron, was attached to an ordinary dress. And between the two brooches, there usually wore a necklace. Since such artifacts are usually found in graves, professional archaeologists have carried out small excavations. However, there was no burial in the place where the brooches were found. One can only guess how these relics got there. Two gilded mummies can lead to Cleopatra's tomb. During excavations in the ancient temple of Tapaziris Magna, archaeologists discovered two mummies, the body of which was covered with gold leaf. The researchers believe that the new discovery will help them unravel one of the greatest mysteries of history, to find the burial place of Queen Cleopatra. The tomb stood untouched for 2,000 years. Scientists believe that during their lifetime, these people had a high status. They belonged to the upper strata of society and may have interacted with Cleopatra herself. Glenn Goudenhoe, an Egyptologist at the University of Liverpool, called the discovery phenomenal. The gold leaf plating shows that these people were important members of society. Researchers suggest that they belonged to the priests who played a key role in maintaining the power of the pharaohs. X-rays showed that the mummies were male and female. Earlier, coins with the name of Cleopatra and the alabaster head of the queen were found at the excavation site. All this makes scientists believe that one day they will be able to discover the tomb of Cleopatra in this region. Entrance to the ancient dungeon. The workers decided to clean the bottom of one of the lakes. When all the preparatory work was carried out and the water began to subside, stonework appeared at a depth of several meters. As the water receded, it became clear that the masonry consisted of steps and an entrance that had been underwater for many years. The find turned out to be an entrance to the dungeon. It had been underwater for more than 200 years. The entrance to the dungeon was equipped very skillfully. It was all hidden underwater, but then the steps went up and the underground part itself was only half filled. The famous Blindheim Palace is considered one of the typical castles in England, but none of its historians even guessed that the structure had a west underground part separated from the main structure. The water on the lake was raised in 1756, then a dam appeared, which increased the amount of water, and surrounded the castle was a cascade of reservoirs. But there is no evidence of the existence of the tunnels. Either they were removed from the archive or they simply did not attach importance to their existence. The water submerged a vast underground space with 30 rooms. The lakes also hid the base of Pembroke Bridge. Archaeologists began exploring underground holes and found that even a vast space resembling a theater was underwater. There were also underground passages that led to the castle on the surface, but they were so well camouflaged that for almost 250 years, no one guessed about them. Most likely, the passages were used by the owners during the sieges of the castle for sorties. Archaeologists call the discovery one of the largest. According to them, it will take years to study the previously underwater space. Mysterious object in the hand of the god Vishvakarman. God Vishvakarman in Hindu mythology is known as the divine master, architect, and creator of the universe. Look at the item in his right hand. I think the version with weapons can be put aside for now, more like a construction theodolite. By the way, in his left hand, he holds a long flat object, very similar to a scaled geodetic rail. It works in tandem with a theodolite when measuring distance. Since a lot of grandiose temple complexes were found on the territory of India, the construction of which without accurate measuring instruments would look like a very difficult task, therefore the secret of such accuracy is possible and should be sought in such divine artifacts. What is the god Vishvakarman actually holding in his hand? Ancient Roman face cream. In 2003, excavations were carried out in London around an ancient Roman temple complex dedicated to the god Mars, and in a ditch near the temple, they found a tin can measuring 5 by 6 centimeters. The jar was opened. The archaeologists were in for a big surprise. An ancient cream was found in the tin, which is 2,000 years old. On the lid, as well as in the contents of the jar, there were grooves from the fingers of the person who used this cream. The cream smelled just monstrous, but the archaeologists were happy. There are no other such preserved finds in the world. Usually such substances are not preserved, especially in such quantities. But firstly, the jar turned out to be surprisingly airtight, and secondly, the swampy soil in which the jar had lain for 2,000 years contributed to its preservation. Immediately, a lot of assumptions were born, but is it a cream? Maybe an ointment for the treatment of wounds, burns, and joints, or maybe toothpaste, and maybe an ointment for the cow's udder. For some reason, the version that this is a face cream that has lain for 2,000 years in a swamp seemed incredible and was not particularly supported. But then, the substance was analyzed, the composition was dismantled, and it was found out that this is really a face cream. The cream is based on the same substances that are currently used in cosmetology: animal fat, probably cow or goat, starch, and tin oxide. White skin among the Romans was considered a sign of grooming. The cream was recreated in the laboratory. It was soft and gentle. Definitely someone from the rich class used this cream. And in terms of composition and quality of the jar, it was a luxury product. 300,000-year-old hunting throwing stick. In the famous Lower Paleolithic site in Schöningen, Germany, where wooden spears 300,000 years old were previously found, another type of hunting weapon of the same age was discovered: a double-pointed, polished, slightly curved throwing stick about 65 centimeters long. Similar tools were used by Aborigines of Australia and Tasmania for hunting birds and small mammals. The discovery showed that already at the end of the early Paleolithic, that is, even before the appearance of the Middle Paleolithic Mycerian Neanderthal culture, the inhabitants of Northern Europe were skilled hunters with a rich arsenal of hunting weapons. The find showed that the repertoire of hunting techniques that Europeans owned 300,000 years ago was wider than previously thought. In addition to light throwing spears from the trunks of young spruces and more massive spears for close combat, the inhabitants of the Schöningen site also owned throwing sticks. It is also possible that they had compound tools with stone tips. It turns out that at the end of the early Paleolithic, the predecessors of the Neanderthals already had a rather complex behavior and developed culture. The last journey of the Aztec god of rain. Tlaloc is the Aztec god of rain and thunder, concurrently also in charge of fire and agriculture. Like many gods in other cultures, Tlaloc was believed to dwell on the tops of mountains. Despite the fact that Tlaloc was rather a positive deity and treated people quite favorably, being himself created by other gods, in anger he could still send all kinds of disasters, one way or another connected with the water element, be it rains, droughts, floods, hail, thunderstorms, and hurricanes. The Aztecs also brought him human sacrifices, drowning victims, including children, in the waters of Lake Texcoco. At first glance, nothing unusual, but rather the opposite, an ordinary deity, similar descriptions of which are all over the world. However, one story associated with this character distinguishes him from others, namely the history of the monumental statue of the god Tlaloc, which now adorns the entrance to the National Museum of Anthropology and History of Mexico City. When exactly the statue of Tlaloc was born is difficult to say now. According to some sources, Atlantis in the 5th century AD. However, this dating is indirect and in fact means little. For many centuries and perhaps longer, the monument lay in a thicket of vegetation at the bottom of a dried-up riverbed near the small settlement of San Miguel, Cote Linchin near Texcoco. And it would have continued to stay there if at the end of the 9th century it had not been discovered while digging a canal for irrigation. The Tlaloc monument is a 7-meter monolithic statue made of andesite, one of the hardest types of stone. Since the weight of Tlaloc is neither more nor less than 167 tons, transporting it even from a neighboring state to the capital turned out to be not the most trivial task. Scientists bring ancient microbes to life. American scientists revived ancient microorganisms which were taken from the bottom of the ocean. Microbes began to multiply again after they were placed in a nutrient habitat. As the scientists explained, the discovery demonstrates that microbes will always find a way to survive. In their opinion, if bacteria could survive for so long in extreme conditions on Earth, then they may well survive harsh conditions on other planets or satellites in the solar system. For the first time, researchers have discovered such ancient microorganisms that have been brought back to life. The previous record, 15 million years, was recorded in 2019. The researchers found the bacteria in soil samples from a depth of 5,700 meters below sea level. When they examined the clay, they found traces of small amounts of oxygen, which meant the bacteria had a food source. Then scientists drilled a new well in the hope of getting the bacteria. The soil was pumped with special substances to create a nutrient habitat: ammonia, acetic acid salts, as well as isotopes of nitrogen and carbon dioxide, and left for 557 days. When samples were taken from the soil for analysis, it turned out that unlike the standard 100,000 cells per cubic centimeter, there were no more than 1,000 bacteria in the clay. Because of this, the researchers added specific nutrients to the bacteria, and after 65 days, the microorganisms had multiplied to 1 million cells per cubic centimeter. As scientists have suggested, microbes managed to live for more than 100 million years thanks to early evolution. Previously, they did not have much to eat, so they learned to survive in conditions of energy conservation and limited nutrition. So far, scientists do not know what happened to microbes over the course of all millions of years in water. They probably continued the division process, but it was very slow. Share the video with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and a new video will be released soon. Thanks for your views. Bye everyone!